In 2018, a wildlife researcher in Zambia watched an elephant stand over the bones of another elephant for 4 hours. She wasn't eating, she wasn't resting. She was touching the bones with the tip of her trunk, slowly, one by one. The elephant who had died wasn't her calf. It wasn't her mother. The two animals had not been seen together in over 6 years. She had no biological reason to be there, and she stayed anyway. For a long time, the scientific position on animal grief was clean and comfortable. Animals don't mourn. What looks like mourning is confusion, or proximity instinct, or something the human observer is projecting onto behavior that has a simpler explanation. That position made sense. It was cautious. It was appropriately skeptical of anthropomorphism. And over the last 30 years, field data has been quietly dismantling it from every direction at once. What animals actually do with their dead is not a simple story. It is not a story that ends with a clean answer, but it is one of the most precisely documented behavioral phenomena in modern wildlife research. And what it reveals about the minds of the animals performing these behaviors is something that the researchers who spend their careers studying it are still working out how to describe. Start with crows. A crow dies on the side of a road. Within minutes, other crows begin arriving. Not one or two, dozens. They land in the surrounding trees and on nearby structures, and they go quiet. The calls stop. They orient toward the body. They stay like that, sometimes for 10 or 15 minutes before dispersing. Researchers at the University of Washington documented this behavior systematically, placing crow bodies in different locations and filming what happened. The gatherings were consistent, reproducible, cross-population, and they carried information. Crows that attended these gatherings subsequently avoided the location where the body had been found and avoided any human they associated with the death for weeks afterward. The researchers were careful not to call it a funeral. What they said was that the behavior serves a survival function. The gathering allows living crows to assess what killed the dead one, avoid the threat, update the threat map. It is a rational explanation. It accounts for the data, but it doesn't fully account for what the crows do after the threat assessment is complete. After the information has been gathered, when there is no longer any survival reason to stay. Some of them stay anyway. Chimpanzees do something that has no clean, functional explanation at all. When a chimpanzee dies within a group, the others don't leave the body. They groom it. They sit beside it. Mothers have been documented carrying the bodies of deceased infants for weeks, sometimes months, continuing to groom them, to hold them, to sleep beside them as the body deteriorates. A researcher named Dora Biro documented a mother chimpanzee in Guinea carrying her mummified infant for 68 days. The infant had died of a respiratory illness. The mother never put it down. She slept with it. She climbed with it. She carried it through every movement her group made for over 2 months until the body had reduced to almost nothing. The functional explanation reaches its limit here. There is no survival benefit to carrying a mummified infant. There is no threat assessment being performed. The researchers who documented these cases describe something that looks from the outside like an inability to accept what has happened, an unwillingness to put it down, which raises a question nobody has fully answered. What does a chimpanzee understand about death? The research suggests more than we assumed. Chimpanzees have demonstrated the ability to distinguish between living and non-living states in controlled experiments. They respond differently to models of sleeping animals versus dead ones. They understand at some functional level that something has permanently changed, which means when a mother carries her dead infant for 68 days, she is not doing it because she thinks it might wake up. She is doing something else, something the data can identify but not fully name. Elephants go further. Elephants don't just respond to the deaths of animals they knew. They respond to the bones of elephants they never met. Cynthia Moss, who spent decades studying elephant populations in Amboseli, documented elephants approaching the bones of other elephants with a specific investigative behavior, touching the bones with their trunks, carrying them short distances, returning to them on separate visits across months and years. They showed no comparable interest in the bones of other large animals placed in the same locations: buffalo bones, rhino bones. They walked past them. Elephant bones they stopped for. The trunk contact is not casual. An elephant's trunk contains more sensory nerve endings than almost any organ in the animal kingdom. When an elephant touches something with the tip of its trunk, it is performing a detailed examination. In documented cases, elephants have returned to the bones of specific individuals, animals they lived alongside, and spent extended time with those specific remains while ignoring the bones of elephants they had no prior relationship with. The recognition is individual, the response is selective. Whatever is happening when an elephant stands over the bones of a companion that died 3 years ago, it is not random behavior. It is directed, it is chosen. And then there are orcas. In 2018, an orca named Tahlequah gave birth in the waters off the Pacific Northwest. The calf died within 30 minutes. Tahlequah carried the body on her forehead for 17 days across more than 1,000 miles of open ocean. The behavior was documented continuously by researchers from the Center for Whale Research. She didn't eat for the duration. She barely slept. When the body began to sink, she dove to retrieve it. Other members of her pod took turns carrying it when she needed to surface. The group coordinated around keeping the dead calf above water for over 2 weeks. Researchers described it as a tour of grief. They were careful with that phrase, careful about what it implied, but they used it anyway because nothing else in the existing behavioral literature covered what they were watching. The harder question is what this means. There is a version of this research that offers a tidy conclusion. Animals that live in complex social groups have evolved behaviors around death because those behaviors serve survival functions. The crow gathering maps threats. The chimpanzee mother's extended carrying may allow a gradual neurological adjustment rather than an abrupt one. The elephant's recognition of individual bones maintains social memory across generations. It all fits, it all makes sense. And then a female orca carries a dead calf for 1,000 miles, and the functional explanation starts to feel like it's describing the shape of something without touching the inside of it. What the data can confirm is this: across dozens of species, in populations studied on every inhabited continent, animals demonstrate consistent, reproducible, costly behaviors in response to the deaths of other animals. Costly in calories, costly in time, costly in risk. Behaviors that serve no immediate survival function and in some cases actively compromise the living animal's condition. The behavior exists anyway. It persists across generations. It appears in several species to involve individual recognition, not just a response to death in the abstract, but a response to the death of this specific animal. What the data cannot reach is what it is to be Tahlequah on day 11, still carrying, still diving when the body sinks, still surrounded by a pod that has not left her side. Whether any of these animals experience something that deserves the word grief is a question the research holds open. The tools are getting better. Long-term behavioral studies, advances in animal cognition research, more rigorous documentation. The data will accumulate. Some of what is currently uncertain will become clearer. What is already clear is this: the assumption that mourning is a human invention, that the rituals we built around death are evidence of something that exists only in us, is not supported by what the field has found. The elephant standing over bones in the dark, the mother who wouldn't put it down, the orca still diving on day 17. They are doing something deliberate, something costly, something that persists long after any practical reason to continue has passed. What exactly that something is, the researchers who study it most carefully refuse to say with certainty. The animals aren't saying anything at all.